Hey, so welcome everybody. This is Charlie Epstein at the 401k Coach, and I'm thrilled today we're here with Mike Montgomery from, it is Montgomery Retirement Plan Advisors.
That's right.
We got the first question down pat, and I'm welcoming you all. Really, this is the first in a series that we're creating across the country, interviewing what I think are some of the top retirement plan advisors in the country who are really bringing innovation to the industry. And I'm grateful for Mike taking the time out. He's got a long and distinguished career, and just engaging with me on this conversation about where's the industry headed, what do you see from both the ground level and the 50,000 foot level, and we'll just chat a little about some questions that I asked you about. But before we do that, why don't we give everybody a little bit about your background, your history, where'd you come from, and how did you end up where you are today?
Okay, I'll try to keep it brief. I actually got into the business in 1977. So I can say I've been in 401k since several years before it existed. Yeah, started in as a wholesaler back when they used to hire 22-year-olds as actual reps many decades ago there. Worked as a wholesaler for several companies for a total of 27 years. And then in 2004, spun off and started my own advisory firm, Montgomery Retirement Plan Advisors. So we've had a good background, mostly in the smaller micro market, even though we now work above that level. That was most of my wholesaling background in the past. It's a background that I think helps on the technical end of things. Sometimes what I've had to learn and adapt to is more of the direct face-to-face sales approach at the time, the consultative approach, which I very much enjoy now. We've been fortunate in building the firm here to win a couple of awards. 401k Wire named us the top advisor in the $5 to $15 million category, both in 2010 and 2012. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, and we are a firm that's CFX certified. That's at the firm level. That's not an individual designation, and it's not an award. They come in, review us, and decide if we're walking the walk on all these fiduciary issues.
Right. So you went through, for those of the people that are going to be viewing this, FI 360 in conjunction with CFX came up with this designation, right? The CFX designation.
That's right. CFX is Center for Fiduciary Excellence.
Okay. And what precipitated? It's unusual because there's not that many firms, as I understand it, especially a firm of your size. I think you said there's just three of you, your son, and a support person. Is that true?
Who does all the real work around here.
Yeah, all the back office due diligence work. So what precipitated your deciding, CFX certification was important?
My reasons may be unique, but I would do it again now. I was spinning off from a partnership with a couple of other guys, one of them being a ERISA attorney who had turned consultant there, and rebranding under the name Montgomery Retirement Plan Advisors, and was kind of sensitive to our small size at the time, and decided this is a time to have third-party endorsement, certification, something that where if you can't talk about your 55 employees and various or a national brand that you can promote. Things like my personal experience, of course, helped, being an accredited investment fiduciary. And in this case here, it was really, let's have somebody come in and put their third-party seal of approval that says essentially these guys are not huge, but they are helping set the benchmark for quality fiduciary practices. So it was really to have a credential, if you will, for the firm. Now we have to renew that every year. We're of audit right now as well.
Yep.
So I think it's valuable. It's not the only designation or certification that means something in the fiduciary arena by any stretch there, but we find it to be very helpful.
Yeah, it's very unique. And how have you positioned that and found that to be in the marketplace when you're out there trying to win new business?
Well, no one's ever heard of it, honestly, on the front end. I have to explain it.
Yep.
For those who are in manufacturing in particular, we know that the concepts behind the CFX approach is based on something called ISO standards.
Yep, ISO 9000 or yep.
Yeah, and I just told you everything I know about that. But and so I draw that analogy. I explain to folks that, look, if Department of Labor ever challenges you, if you're ever involved in litigation saying, why are you dealing with Mike Montgomery's firm? that certainly there are other things you could talk about. Mike's been around since '77 and this sort of thing, but when you're trying to summarize why you're dealing with a firm, nice, crisp, verifiable bullet points are what people remember. If the subordinate has hired me and their boss says, "Who is this guy and why shouldn't we just hire my broker instead?" They can say, "Well, he's an accredited investment fiduciary. He's done this 35 years, and their firm is something called CFX Certified, which means an outside organization is kicking their tires and signed off on them." And that's my positioning.
Yeah, and if you are dealing I don't know if you deal with manufacturers, it's like-mindedness. Just like you said, ISO 9000 or whatever version they're into right now in CFX. That's
They
great.
immediately get it. Those guys do.
So let me ask you this question, because the reason I asked you to have this conversation with me is what I was attracted most about you and your kind of where you've come from is you spent 27 years, you said, as a wholesaler, and then something happened, and you decided I'm going to put up my own shingle from scratch, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
you weren't a 22-year-old.
No. That
so
was
that's kind of gutsy.
Thank you for noticing.
Maybe looking. Oh, see, you don't know that. I mean, you were how old? You don't have to say. So what happened? Because I know wholesalers that never get out of that world, and so do you.
Way, right? We're on the wholesale side. You're always wondering what it's like over there on that other side, and
the grass is greener, right?
Yeah, it always. You see the guys that from and I'm saying this only half seriously from a wholesaler's perspective. You're seeing guys that don't know as much as you, that are making apparently a lot more than you,
and look better than you. Let me just button up my my collar.
Yeah, so you're thinking at the time, I can do that. In fact, I'd love to. After 27 years, as much as I really was loyal to the companies I was working for, you start to realize you've got some intellectual capital. You got some experience in this business,
mm-hmm.
and you're constrained to dealing with one company's product. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be dishonest. As a wholesaler, I always felt I could look every prospective client in the eyes, tell them what was good about my product as honestly as I could. It was a fit or it wasn't. And so it wasn't a matter of integrity, but just being able to walk in, as I can do now, and say, if it's in the area of retirement plan consulting, I can solve your problem. I didn't walk in with a product or a solution. I can solve your problem here. That from a fulfillment standpoint was very appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the age factor, and that was actually very important. I was 49 when I did this, and I had told myself if I was ever going to get out on the retail side, if you will, that it doubtless would take 10 or 15 years to really get where I wanted to go, and that was a pretty correct assessment looking back on it there. And so I better get the show on the road at the age I was in. I was getting sort of at a point of no return.
Yep.
Decided I would go ahead and do it.
And so you severed the wholesaler relationship, put your shingle up, and what was that first year like for you?
It involved a lot of starvation and stress for my wife.
You didn't tell her to move away for a year then?
No. She was very supportive of me, and I appreciate it because it can't be easy with there was no transition. Go from a reasonably good paycheck to how much money are we pulling out of savings this month and next month for a long period of time.
Yep.
There. So yeah, it was very challenging. I have no easy answer to give others who want to make that transition, except save as much money as you can, make sure it's something you want to do, and just work like you've never worked before in your life. And that's what I did. It was very little financial reward, very little, and really probably until the end of the third year.
So it took you 3 years, but it sounds like also you cut off the alternative, right? So did you, there was no turning back, so to speak.
I could have gone back and interviewed for wholesaler jobs, I suppose, at some point without being embarrassed about it. In fact, they might have, if I'd had 6 months of advisor experience and then came back, they might have considered it a useful learning experience.
Valuable.
Yeah, I pretty much shut the door behind me there. And once you've once you've gone a couple of years into it, for most of us, financially, there's no turning back at that point in time. You've made a huge dollar investment,
Yep.
as well as, of course, a mental investment and investment of your time as well.
Yeah. So why do you do what you do? What motivates you and attracts you to this business? Why make the move you made, and then why do you continue with such passion? Because you definitely have passion about it.
I've looked for a very concise way to explain it, and it's not about control in the classic sense of that term. I would say it's about the ability to manage my own environment. I know that when I walk into a prospect or client's door, that I can solve their problems, and I can do it because of the things I know, and the things I don't know I can research by the other professionals I can bring to bear. I think somewhere on our website it even says if we don't know the answer, we know someone who does know it.
Mm-hmm.
And I find all of that to be very enjoyable, very gratifying. Just everybody's wired differently, and for me, being the guy who can bring genuine help, and by that it's not this company's product over that one, but that I can say we're going to roll up our sleeves. You're going to understand what you're paying for the first time, maybe.
Yep.
You're going to have somebody who's doing my absolute best to truly be objective in all of these recommendations, and try to act like the coworker down the hall, an employee of their firm, in making recommendations. So I would say really it's a lot of just personal satisfaction in that.
Great. Now it's been, you said about what, 9 years since you started?
8.5. Yeah.
So if you were to look back over the last 3 to 5 years, knowing what you know now, starting a business and doing the things, are there any things that you would have changed, or you're maybe changing now in your business model?
If I go back to the start, it gives me, I can come up with more things I would change, like probably not take in as many small clients, but I'm not so sure that I'm correct in that.
When you say small, meaning under startup plans or?
I never sold a startup plan, but $500,000, million and a quarter, or maybe where I was splitting 50-50 compensation with somebody.
Yep.
And the gross comp was only 8,000, so I'm doing all the work and making a few thousand. I'm not so sure that if I really reflected on that's my position, though. I mean, there's a part of me that says to somebody who's making this move, get out, cut your teeth on those small ones, do your best job. You've got a lot of things, no matter whether you're affiliated with an LPL, an RPAG, or using 401k coach tools, all of those things, you still have to make it your own. And so you're going to have to if you really want to be a great advisor, you've really got to make it your own and apply your own ideas. And so I'm not sure you want to be trying all of that out on a $25 million plan.
Right.
So going way back, I might curtail some of the really small sales. Going back 4 or 5 years, I would. That's easy. We had our processes in place by then. I would have a more disciplined marketing plan, and I would make myself stick to it. We've done well with marketing, but it has not been by doing it by the numbers as much as I would like to.
And so, from a marketing point of view, because I was going to get to that question, so what is it that you have done or continue to do, 2 or 3 things consistently with marketing that have paid off for you? Because that's always the biggest sticking point for everybody that comes to us here at Coach.
Sure it is. Still is.
Yeah.
Still is. In the beginning, when we were more disciplined, because I didn't have anything else to do but market, it was probably my key back then was not finding one strategy, not just developing CPAs or not just buying leads, but literally trying to do all of that at once. I have this multi-spoked wheel stuck up on the side of my office that has things at the end of each spoke, like buy leads, develop CPAs, network with TPAs, partner with others there, and everybody's going to have different things on their wheel. But the key there in the early going was do all of it at once. Really, at least that worked for me.
Yep.
That's the thing that worked out well for me. In the early days, I partnered with some other organizations. Now, some folks partner by going and being an employee or subcontractor of a P&C firm or something, and there you give up some ownership. And that's not fully what I'm talking about here, where you're in kind of an employee relationship. But setting those up ad hoc. I was carrying 3 or 4 business cards around by 3 or 4 years into this.
So you set up like strategic alliances or partnerships with other organizations?
Give me some office space in their place. I would be Mike Montgomery, the 401k representative for XYZ insurance firm. That worked out well for me. There are downsides to that. I didn't strike a hard enough deal. And many of, say, the big property and casualty firms, 50-50 comes to mind every time they're setting up a split. I can tell you now in hindsight, we've got some fairly low revenue clients where you can't double your comp on every case.
Right.
There's an upper limit, obviously, realistically, and just to make what you ought to make on the plan. So those are lower revenue. I did early on pledge to myself I would never let that become more than 25% of my total revenue. In hindsight, I'm very pleased I did the partnering, and I'm very pleased that I put a cap on that because you don't really own that partnered business. I think one thing that's worked well for us is simply networking. The term is overused, but I knew a lot of people as a wholesaler. Just tried to get out there and let every TPA, even the vendors, the providers themselves, ERISA attorneys. The challenge with this, I find, and when I tell folks we get most of our business from referrals, I'm sure the impression is Mike's the luckiest guy in the world. That's the advantage to being around for 35 years in this business, is he just answers the phone and people steer it to him. That's not the case at all. If you know a lot of people, one ERISA attorney of the 5 you're cultivating may steer you one client every 2 or 3 years. That's exactly how I got into the municipal government plan market, and now I have, $150, $200 million of municipal plan business. The providers have referred me a couple of plans.
Yep.
When I divide it out, though, it's maybe one every year,
all
of them collectively. So my point with networking is, unless you strike a formal partnership that is sure to unleash a lot of referrals to you, you want to know a lot of people, cultivate them, do good work, and let them see it. And then it's almost a random chance thing that some are going to refer you business. So that's worked very well for us as well.
Yep. Anything new that you're this year, 2012, or as you look to 2013, from a marketing point of view, that you're thinking we need to start doing something new to expand what we're doing?
Yeah, we've always been pretty good with doing some niche work. I would consider my government plan work kind of niche. We pulled into one, got the second one, then actively sought the third, so we could call ourselves experts in the government arena.
Congratulations!
Yeah, thank you. and a couple of years ago, got involved with multiple employer plans as a fiduciary too, the MEPs there.
Yep.
I think probably piggybacking on that, the next step for us is going to be partnering with those who are serving, and it's usually a third-party administrator that's going to do that, serving as a 316 fiduciary.
Yep.
So really just the evolution of what has been the multiple employer plan. I'm also getting a lot of just word of mouth demand to act as a fiduciary, either 338 or just as a fiduciary for other advisors that cannot or don't want to be fiduciaries themselves. I'm not really outwardly marketing that very aggressively. I find one of the nice things about this business is you can it's not really experimenting, but you can do something on a smaller scale and decide if this is something that is scalable, something you want to expand a lot. But I think, we'll be acting as independent fiduciaries for plans that are not our plans per se.
Great, that's a nice niche. What's the hardest piece of business you ever had to win?
Probably the toughest in terms of the odds being long was one of my larger government clients, the city of Clearwater. Being public entities, I can talk about client names with my city clients to a reasonable extent. I didn't know anybody at City of Clearwater, no one, no contact at all. It's a straight RFP, where when the questions are usually coming out, how big are you? How many other government plans? By then, I had 4 other government clients, thank goodness, all of which were good referrals, but not a huge amount. I wasn't going to win the numbers game. And I had some good local competition here, as well as some even from out of state that did specialize in government plans. So I just made the judgment call because it was in the same county where I had some of my other clients that the referrals I was going to be able to put out there, or references, excuse me, that I was going to put out there were people that were physically 10, 15, 20 miles away from this particular city. So I decided to answer the RFP. There was nothing in there that looked like it was going to knock me out with all the how big are you and how many of these plans there. What helped me in that competition, ironically, may have been that they set a totally unrealistic period of time for our finals presentations. I made the cut to the finals, not sure what their criteria was, but I made it. So when there were 4 of us going into finals, they said, all of you, you've got 20 minutes to tell us your whole story. Well, I can tell you this was very good for me.
Okay.
I've never met a detail I didn't want to cover.
Mm.
and it was very good for me, and I sat down and was able to script it out saying, I got 20 minutes. These guys probably stop listening after that anyway. And in most presentations, what are 3 points they're going to go home with? And I crafted it, and hit some bullet points, and we got it.
Congratulations. Yeah, but you had to do the work. And the other thing I like about what you said is, you looked at your odds, right? And kind of circled up the horses that you had, the references. And then it sounds, you had the confidence that you could compete with anybody on an equal footing, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
and that boded really well for you.
Yeah.
With the short amount of time that we have left, when you look at this business today, and it's changed so much since you were a wholesaler, and just in the last 8 years, what do you see as the greatest dangers that you face right now in this industry that could negatively impact, your company's success?
Probably commoditization of what we do. That's certainly, since there really have, since being a 401k specialist or retirement plan specialist has expanded in the 2000s, it's been a pretty steady progression of things that were somewhat unique, offering fiduciary support, fiduciary guidance, acting as a fiduciary, monitoring funds. All of these things, even as we sit here, can be commoditized right now. I think they'll become more so if over time. I think much of what a value proposition is for guys like me today, we have to assume will be partially or completely commoditized in a few years. That's what makes it exciting, is we've always got to be thinking, where's the puck moving to, not where is it today.
And so where do you 3 years out, where do you see, how do you break out of that commoditization trap and be able to look that plan sponsor in the eye and say, and I didn't ask you this, but it sounds like you have what I call a minimum check. You look for business that's going to pay you at least a minimum amount to make it worthwhile and profitable.
Yeah.
And that's getting smaller for all of us.
Yeah.
And how do you look them in the eye and say, I'm worth the 10 or 20 or 30 grand that you're paying?
Well, one is to evolve. And the next area, and this isn't original with me, is certainly taking responsibility for outcomes, working with employers, measuring outcomes. And this is the hardest part. This is I don't mind telling you, this is the toughest needle to change.
Yep.
The toughest needle to move in this business, because we can't snap our fingers and have every employee, employers making the match we want them to make, and employees sometimes even coming to the meetings like we'd like to there. So that's very challenging. But developing improved skills in that area is going to be very, very important over time. And that's I know some of my answers now. I'll know most of them 3 or 4 years from now.
Yep.
But I think what's not going to change, what is a constant, is plans large or small want a trusted expert individual. And as long as the advisor makes sure they're better than their tools, that as long as we're in a position where when somebody else comes in and says, well, I can do that fund monitoring for a fourth of what Mike does, that my client will look at them and say, yeah, but it's not the same thing. Here's what Mike does with that. And as long as we have that, here's what Mike does with that answer, straight down the line: fiduciary work, participation enhancement, investment monitoring, and so on then we will always be relevant.
And I think what you're talking about is the whole experience. That's the value piece of it, that you're creating this unique experience for people. And as we wrap up, you know, what I would say is, Mike, you create greater clarity and confidence for people.
Yes.
And then you provide them with the capabilities, and price becomes incidental at that point.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I really appreciate it. This has been great, especially listening to you and learning from you. And I look forward to you being the launch of this new section of the 401k Coach site.
Thank you. You are the master, and I've learned a lot from you. I've got to say that before we go.
Well, I appreciate it. And it's also good to hear that we're all headed to the outcomes, since we've got Paychecks for Life to talk about for the rest of our lives. So, yeah, I appreciate it. And those of you that are viewing this, Mike, if they can reach out to you, is that okay?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so we want to make sure it's available. We'll have Mike's contact information, and other advisors that'll be watching this on our website have the opportunity to reach out to you and see you at the conferences. And don't be bashful to walk up to Mike. He'll be happy to bend your ear and share ideas. And also, though, you have to share with him so we all keep learning together. So I appreciate it.
Happy to do that. Thank you for having me.